It's week 2 of my weekly video, and I normally like to do these videos outside or going for a walk, but check this out. It's wet, it's rainy, it's grey, it's very British weather, so sorry, but we're going to be indoors today, which is in lots of ways in keeping with the theme of this video. Earlier this week was Blue Monday. That's the name given to the third Monday in January. This is the day that is sometimes referred to as the most depressing day of the year. It's the time in the new year where it's cold and wet and many of our New Year's resolutions have failed. It's the time when our minds start to say, what is the point? What is my purpose this year? And I've definitely experienced this at times in my life. Times when all the signs in my life feel like they're pointing in a direction that is not good. Well, today I'd like to share with you a sign that I have seen which is less depressing. A sign I have seen as I've begun to study John's Gospel and started to reflect on the Apostle John who wrote it. See, one of the fascinating things about John's Gospel is that he calls the miracles of Jesus signs. But in many ways, John himself became like a living signpost, always pointing people to Jesus and to the meaning of his signs. When Jesus first called John, he was likely a teenager or a young adult working as a fisherman. Then Jesus spoke 2 simple words, "Follow me." And John did. He left his nets immediately. And from that moment on, he became an eyewitness to some of the most extraordinary events in history. John saw water turned into wine. He witnessed the feeding of the 5,000. He saw Jesus walking on water, blind eyes opened and the dead raised. He witnessed the transfiguration. He stood near Jesus at the cross. He ran to the empty tomb. He saw the risen Christ. He watched Jesus ascend into heaven, and he received the empowering of the Holy Spirit at Pentecost. So what did all this do to John? It transformed him. He was changed from a fisherman into a fisher of men. He became John the evangelist, a man whose life always pointed others to Jesus. And that's why God led John to write John's Gospel and the letters of 1, 2 and 3 John and the book of Revelation. And John tells us exactly why he wrote all these things. It says this in John's Gospel: Jesus did many other signs in the presence of the disciples, which are not written in this book. But these are written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. John wrote his Gospel to point people to believe in Jesus. And the example of John speaks powerfully at the beginning of a new year. It's easy to ask ourselves, what's the point? What is my purpose this year? But John reminds us that the purpose of life is to follow Jesus and to point others to him. And here's the remarkable thing. This also is a sign of where real joy is found. John wrote, "I have no greater joy than to hear that my children are walking in the truth." John's greatest joy was walking in the truth of Jesus and seeing others do the same. That joy sustained him to the very end of his life. John was the youngest of the disciples, yet he lived to be the oldest. He endured imprisonment, suffering, and exile on the island of Patmos. And church history tells us that he survived miraculously from being boiled alive. But John, through all this, remained faithful. He did not quit or lose heart. Why? Because his greatest joy was not comfort or success or recognition. His greatest joy was walking in the truth of Jesus and helping others to do the same. And that really challenges me as I begin a new year. If I want a joy that lasts beyond the ups and downs of life, if I want a joy that lasts me through rainy, grey, cold days, if I want a joy that helps me get through the times of suffering and difficulty and trial in my life, I need to reset my joy to be like John's. That's the kind of joy that endures, and that's the kind of joy that is worth building a year upon.